Hey, welcome back to Well, That's Interesting, the full of surprises edition. Today is episode 227. Man knocks down wall in his basement and finds an ancient underground city, and the wild story behind IKEA's product names. My friends, in the long list of things we love to cover on this show, a good home renovation might not be in the top 5. Hell, it might not be in the top 10. But ever so slowly, this topic is creeping in. Back in July of ye old 2024, during episode 198, woolly mammoth skeletons found under wine cellar and bear meat causes parasitic worm outbreak at a family barbecue, not only did we learn to be extremely cautious about eating the bear meat that one particular uncle brings to the family reunion, but you don't have to travel far to reveal the past. We pushed our way into the home of a man in Austria because underneath his feet were the bones of 30 to 40,000-year-old woolly mammoths. Plural, like more than one. The extremely Austrian named Andreas Pernerstoffer, who lives in the even more strenuously Austrian-sounding town of Gobelsberg, he has a thing for vino, and it inspired him to give his own basement a zhuzh with the goal of converting it into a wine cellar. When the dirt foundation was eventually exposed, there looked to be only shards of debris just sticking out of the ground, and when Andreas bent down to pluck one out, it didn't budge. What happened next led to one of my favorite quotes of all time on this show. Quote, "I thought it was just a piece of wood left by my grandfather, but then I dug it out of the ground a bit, and then I remembered that in the past, my grandfather said he found teeth. And then I immediately thought it was a mammoth." End quote. Andreas told the Austrian Broadcasting Corporation, ORF, "First, yes, you heard that right, my hungry business goose. Grandpa once found teeth, and no one did anything. And 2, yes, what Andreas found, what he uncovered, was a bone. One belonging to several woolly mammoths that were butchered and eaten by humans living during the oldest Stone Age period known as the Upper Paleolithic, 40,000 years ago. It all happened in what is now his basement. And I have great news. I have a new home renovation story that gives that one a run for its money. In the first half of the show, we are heading back to the early groovy 1960s to a part of the world that looks as though actually much of it froze in the Bronze Age. And to be honest, the Bronze Age, beginning around 3300 BCE, is actually quite recent for where we're heading. I'm talking about the Nevşehir province of Turkey. This is an incredible place. The earliest evidence of human settlement can be traced back to prehistoric times. So it should not come as a surprise that when you dig here, you hit something. But for one man, at home, minding his fucking business, and trying to just tick off a nagging task on his to-do list, he actually made history. In an attempt to open up and expand his own basement, he decided to sledgehammer down a wall, as one does, and he had no idea that by doing that, he was about to expand his home by a depth of approximately 85 meters or 280 feet. My friends, that's 18 stories deep. And it didn't stop there. These levels contained a seemingly endless number of rooms where, inside them, remained evidence of chapels, schools, and even stables. Y'all, behind that wall was a tunnel to an underground city. It wasn't occupied when he found it, but we will learn about the people who lived there at one time, about who built it, why they were there, and where the fuck they went. Then after the break, we're leaving this guy's gigantic home for yours. I think it's safe to say most of us listening now have at one point shopped at or ordered from IKEA. Congrats to everyone. Congrats all around for surviving. As a reward, we need to talk about how IKEA products get their name and the campaign created by some Swedish folks to retaliate. Spoiler, by taking a humorous approach, that's pretty fucking great. My friends, not to give too much away here in the intro, but the 12,000 plus items in the IKEA inventory have a Scandinavian-sounding name, and we will get into the system they use. And we're going to match the product with the place, and sometimes it's going to get a little awkward. In the meantime, hi, I'm Jill Chacha, and if this is your first time listening, welcome to the flock, my flat-packed business goose. To begin, I've been charging up the old time machine overnight, and I'm about to dial it way the fuck back to 1963. But don't worry, I've packed us enough fresh white boots, tailored skirts and pants with bold colors and prints, short boxy jackets with large buttons, and some stiletto heels, so we will blend right the fuck in, don't you worry. But, you know what? Now that I think about it, where we're going, I'm not sure which decade of garb to bring because this place is ancient. I'm talking spanning thousands of years, and parts of it are frozen in time. My friends, join me, will you, in the Nevşehir province, located in the middle-ish of the Cappadocia region, which, for my fellow geographically challenged Americans, can itself be found in the very middle of Turkey. Please, drop whatever Cappadocia you're holding right now and pick up your phone. You'll see why scores of nature-loving tourists travel here every year. Head on over to our social media stuffs and you'll see a map of where we are and 2 photos of its landscape. I'll give you a sec. Okay, at first, it looks a lot like New Mexico. There are mountains which have distinct, multicolored horizontal layers, but in one photo, you cannot miss this detail. There's a hot air balloon in flight, and in the background are towering pillars that just scatter to the horizon. These rock formations are whimsically called fairy chimneys by the locals, because they kind of resemble chimneys of houses that might be imagined as belonging to fairies in a storybook. They even have a little mushroom cap at their very top. Now, I'd like you to put a pin in this because soon we'll learn it's not fairies who lived underground. In the meantime, I'm going to destroy your childlike imagination by telling you how these chimneys actually formed. My bedazzled business goose. Long, 60-million-year-old long story short, this area was once smothered by heaps of volcanic ash by nearby active mountains like what is now Mount Arceus. Nailed it. Over the millennia, wind, rain, and weather eroded some of the softer layers, deposits ironically called tuff, Tuff. What remained are the harder deposits and what we see now, these staggering and numerous pillars. However, the primary rock type in Cappadocia is the tuff stuff, a compacted volcanic ash that is relatively easy to erode. So please, whip out another pin and stick it in this tuff stuff. Now, back to swing in 1963, where we've crash-landed onto the lawn of a home where its resident is about to have quite a day. In all reports, he remains anonymous, but from what we do know, he was finally getting around to his to-do list. And on that list was updating the look of his basement, because it is now the 60s after all, and like the buttons on our jackets, it's time to go big. I'm assuming this wasn't his first rodeo, as he was equipped with a sledgehammer and the confidence of someone who can swing it, and swing it into a wall he knew for sure wasn't load-bearing. With a twist, the head of the sledgehammer easily sliced into the side of the exposed rock, which, you guessed it, was that sweet, sweet tuff. He expected more tuff behind it, but there wasn't. A hollow, dark hole had formed. A breeze was felt, and like a proper member of the flock, he decided to go inside. My friends, my shattered childlike imagination cannot comprehend what the following must have felt like. I'm assuming it was probably something like a combination of discovering Narnia, landing on the moon, and face planting into a sci-fi novel. I'm gonna need you to sit the fuck down and prepare yourself for details of the lost city I'm about to sledgehammer into you. Are you ready? Okay, it's time to unpin that first pin about the fairies. This gentleman found himself first walking down a single-file tunnel, which led to various single-file tunnels, leading into various directions, each of which led into a room, after room, after room, to staircases, to adjoining staircases, all accumulating into an 18-story underground complex covering an area of 445 square kilometers or 172 square miles. Yeah. Under his house. If you do the clickety-clack calculations, this human ant colony could contain up to 20,000 people. 20,000 people. Let's get into it. My exploratory business goose. Thanks to decades of archaeological research, we know that the depth and width of this place was divided into 5 distinct levels, whose architecture was so precise, not one corridor, not one arc or room has collapsed to this day. If you head on over to our social media stuffs and tap on today's post, I'll have a nice chunk of photos for you that will try and do this place justice. So do swipe along and take a tour of it as I read through my notes. Now, we're going to get into a timeline soon, but let's talk about what this place offered its residents first. Being a city, it featured all the amenities you would expect. In the lower levels, there were dedicated rooms for wine and oil, and there were stables. There were stables for all sorts of domesticated animals, and there were cellars to keep food fresh. The upper levels, however, were dedicated to daily living. The typical home here had quarters consisting of bedrooms, kitchens, bathrooms, and a small shrine if you so fancied one. If you've dropped your child and are checking out today's post on your phone, as you should, you'll see photos of smooth, rounded hallways and gaping rooms, and you're going to land on a photo of a particular room with a remarkable barrel-vaulted ceiling. It's fucking gorgeous. This is located on the 2nd level, and it's been reported that it was used as a religious school, and the rooms to the left and the right were for other studies. So just think of this as like a university of sorts. Now, I know what you may be thinking by now. Jill, wow, that's fucking crazy. I mean, places to shop and take classes are great if you're alive. You just said dozens of rooms were like feet below the surface. How the fuck did these people breathe? Where do they get their water, their light? And for Christ's sakes, who made this thing? And why? Why would they resort to living like this? Brilliant questions, my thirsty business goose. I am so glad you asked. Swipe past that exquisite room with the ceiling, and you're going to see one heck of a deep well. As your eyes descend, notice the holes on either side every few feet. Those holes allowed for access to each level. Quote, water was supplied from underground shafts, such as the 55-meter deep or the 180-foot deep well pictured here. The water supply was controlled from the bottom up, with lower floors being able to cut off supply to the upper floors, which helped prevent invaders from poisoning the well. The entire city itself was ventilated by a total of more than 15,000 shafts, most about 10 centimeters or 4 inches wide, reaching down into the 1st and 2nd levels of the city. End quote. From ZME Science and BigThink.com. It blows my mind. Thousands of strategically placed shafts and wells circulated air and provided water to the masses. It's no surprise, then, that this city was named Dördüncü, which translates from Turkish to deep well. Speaking of the masses, who the fuck came up with this and why? Well, copious amounts of evidence points to the Phoenicians, who, in another very long story short, were an ancient Indo-European speaking people who inhabited the central west part of an old-ass kingdom called Anatolia, which is where modern-day Turkey is today. According to archaeologists at the Turkish Department of Culture, the earliest tunnels can be dated to 800 BCE, 2,800 years ago. Not only were the Phrygians around at this time, they were considered to be the folks who killed it during the Bronze Age, around 1200 BCE. And then they became the Frank Lloyd Wrights of the Iron Age that came afterwards. Mega complex construction projects were their jam. There's also a single surviving written account dated much later to 370 BCE, which was found in a text, like a collection of words, not like the digital message thing, in a text written by Xenophon of Athens, and we all know that one. Good old Zeno mentioned people of Anatolia excavating their homes underground, but he didn't explain why. Modern archaeologists today can only provide theories. Like the old saying goes, Dörkenuju wasn't built in a day. As noted earlier, the project began around 2,800 years ago, perhaps as a way to keep food, grain, and other perishables from spoiling. As Frank Jacobs over at BigThink.com reported, the underground city may have served as a temperate refuge for the region's extreme seasons. Cappadocian winters can be very cold. The summers extremely hot. Below ground, the ambient temperature is consistent and moderate. As a bonus, it is easier to store and keep harvest yields away from moisture and thieves. Quote. Well, but, and big but here, as empires grew and overlapped, as religions and people crossed borders over the centuries, well, you guessed it. Humanity lived up to its worst. Invasions, clashes, racism. As power struggles rose, the number of chambers and levels of Dörkenuju, the levels were created out of necessity for protection. My friends, in the photos provided, take a close look at the doorways at the end of these long passages. What you'll find are literal fucking emergency boulders that the residents used to roll into place and block the access to block the tunnels to seal themselves in with their livestock and their months of supplies until whatever murderous threat passed. Hundreds of these boulders were placed throughout the city to cut off and contain an invasion if need be. The design was brilliant, and it didn't stop there. Remember the single-wide tunnel our weekend warrior found after sledgehammering his basement wall? Well, that's no mistake. That tiny detail was on purpose. Narrow passages meant invading forces had to crawl or walk through one at a time, single file, making them easy pickings on the other end. It's believed this underground city fortress was eventually completed during the Byzantine era around 330 AD. And that's no fucking coincidence. After the fall of the bloated Roman Empire, this part of it broke off to do its own thing and became what's known as the Byzantine Empire, and its center was Constantinople, aka modern-day Istanbul, in Turkey. So, if you slide past the photos of Dörkenuju's wells, you'll see Constantinople/Istanbul's location. To the immediate left is Europe. To the far right, the Middle East. With the Romans' vice grip on the world gone, tiny, hungry men from either side saw Turkey as the crossroads between Europe and Asia. To dominate the rest of the globe with your stupid ideas and practices, you need Turkey under your control. My delicate business goose. When I say the Byzantine Wars took place over centuries, I fucking mean it. Okay, here we go. Primarily caused by the constant threat of invasions from neighboring empires and tribes, including the Avar, Slavs, Arabs, Bulgarians, and later the Seljuk Turks, who aimed to expand their territories into the Byzantine lands, conflicts over borders and the control of regions, key regions, especially in the Balkans and the Eastern Mediterranean raged. Let's not forget about the internal political instability and power struggles within the Byzantine Empire, which also contributed to the wars, as did religious disputes and the desire to reclaim lost territories from the Western Roman Empire. Long story short, a clusterfuck lasted from around the 6th century to the goddamn 11th. Generations of families never experienced peace. They could only find temporary safety. For those in the Cappadocia region, it was Durakunju. At some point, probably when the shit really hit the fan, Durakunju was connected to another underground city called Keimakli. And it was connected through a 3-mile tunnel, although it's now blocked after sections of it just collapsed. So I'm assuming it was built in haste. Because remember, this tough stuff can be easily dug away, but one wrong angle, and it's unstable. Anyway, I have good news, everyone. The fighting didn't stop with the Byzantine Wars and Empire. No. No, from the Mongol raids in the 14th century up until the Greco-Turkish War from 1919 to 1922. Any peoples who were under prosecution called the battles of Durakunju home. And I can see your face from here. Your expression says, if it was so popular for so long, what happened? Well, my friends, the only thing that could stop people from using a city such as this as a sanctuary from war is an even bigger disaster known as the 20th century. According to the wiki, in 1923, Christian inhabitants of the region were expelled from Turkey and moved to Greece in the population exchange between Greece and Turkey, whereupon the tunnels became empty, never to be filled again. After 1923, nothing happened. No, I'm kidding. Everything happened. Like a crippling depression, 2 world wars, the threat of a nuclear annihilation. Not even Durakunju was a safe haven, and it was all but forgotten. Until 1963, when a man with fashionable interior design sense used a sledgehammer. After the break, speaking of interior design, we're going to cleanse our palate with functional, affordable, sustainable Scandinavian aesthetic and humor. That toilet brush you have from IKEA, it's named after a place. And the people from that place are like, what the fuck? You got to hear about this one. Stay tuned.
At LinkedIn, we know hiring is a big deal for your small business. Sometimes it can feel a little overwhelming. LinkedIn uses data that you can't find anywhere else to give you the best candidates, all so you can feel confident you're hiring the best person for the job. And even a little hiring bliss. See why 86% of small businesses who post a job on LinkedIn get a qualified candidate within a day. Post a job for free at linkedin.com/achieve. LinkedIn, your next great hire is here.
This episode is brought to you by Peacock. The new Peacock original documentary, Matthew Perry, A Hollywood Tragedy, dives deep into the beloved actor's rise to fame and his tragic death. 5 people, including Perry's personal assistant, 2 medical doctors, and an alleged Hollywood drug dealer known as the Ketamine Queen, were charged with conspiracy to illegally provide Perry with the ketamine. Explore the details of the case in this heartbreaking special, streaming now only on Peacock.
And we're back. We are so back. And my friends, I ask, if you're sitting, is it on an ektorp? If you're enjoying a hot beverage, is it out of an umjak? When you walked into a shop recently, did you use the shahram on the door first? No, I didn't have a stroke, but thanks for asking. These are the names of a sofa, mug, and door handle available where else but IKEA. Now, these names and the 12,000 plus names like them over at IKEA's website aren't a cutesy moniker for products. These are the legit product codes. And if you said to yourself, aren't product codes like actual fucking numbers? Or a combination of numbers and letters so companies can easily identify and track a thing throughout its life cycle, like from manufacturing to retail sale? Yes, my savvy business goose, 99% of the time, that's how things usually go. But not in the charmingly kooky world of IKEA, which is not a sponsor, but I would like that IKEA money, so please email me. Anyway, let's get into it. Back in a time when nothing was happening, 1943, a wee 17-year-old Ingvar Kamprad founded a little idea called IKEA, and it was just a mail-order sales business. The name IKEA was certainly a foreshadow of what was to come. It's actually an acronym of the founder Ingvar Kamprad's name, the IK, his initials. E stands for Elmtard, the family farm where Kamprad was born, and the A is for the nearby village of Egenard, which is in southern Sweden. This is going to be a difficult segment. Oh, well. Anyway, the mail order situation, even during wartime, was a hit. 5 years later, the company evolved into reselling furniture with a brick-and-mortar opening in Almhult in 1958 under the name Mobile IKEA. Mobile meaning furniture in Swedish. Now, if you stop and think about it, starting a business where people sell their furniture in need of funds after a war to people in need of furniture after a war is a smart business move. The first stores outside Sweden opened in Norway and Denmark in the late 60s, with stores spreading to other parts of Europe in the 1970s. The first store outside Scandinavia opened in Switzerland in 1973. Every passing year, a new country opened its arms to IKEA, and IKEA itself morphed into a powerhouse, selling simple, affordable house stuffs. So what's with their fucking names? Well, it all goes back to Ingvar, who was dyslexic. Distinguishing numerical codes was a Swedish pain in the ass, so a new system was developed to sort everything in its place. As reported by Ann Quinto of Quartz.com, bathroom items, I'll say that again, bathroom items like a toilet brush, are all named after Swedish lakes or bodies of water. Put a pin in this. Sofas, chairs, dining sets, and non-poop related things are named after places in Sweden. Rugs are named after Danish places, and bedroom and living room furniture after Norwegian ones, so they lucked out. Outdoor furniture is named after islands in Scandinavia. Desks and chairs get Scandinavian boys' names. Fabrics and curtains get Scandinavian girls' names, so what the fuck's up with that stereotype shit, Ingvar? Kitchen accessories, easy. That'll be fish, mushrooms, and adjectives. What else do they have here? Finally, lighting equipment and all that jazz. IKEA uses units of measurement, seasons, months, days, shipping, and nautical items, nautical terms, sorry. Sometimes Swedish place names are used for lighting equipment. It feels like they really don't give a fuck about this department. So, anyway, I know what you're thinking. So what? That's a great question. For 99% of us, the naming system really has no impact. Unless you're one of the folks who runs Sweden's official website for tourism and travel information. Quote, Tuften, Ektorp, Vaxnan, Hemsjö, Kalix. These are all wonderful places in Sweden. Yet, most people associate these names with waste bins, sofas, bath towels, block candles, and shelf systems. And it's all because of a blue and yellow giant. End quote. From visitsweden.com/discover-the-originals. Continuing from the site, quote, a lot of IKEA's products are named after places in Sweden. That's a nice deal for a Swedish company, but it has caused a great deal of misunderstanding. Today, millions of people think that Bolmen is just a toilet brush. And if you search for Jarjalet, all you'll find are pictures of gaming chairs. It's time the world knows that these names belong to wonderful places in Sweden. End quote. My friends, this straightforward message is a different take from what was posted on the old tube of you in the early 2020s. The video, alas, is no longer available. But Thanks to the internet and to Frank Jacobs of BigThink.com, I've got screenshots and quotes of a deadpan humor campaign that will hopefully make a return. Tap on today's post on our social media stuffs and you will see an individual standing in front of a gorgeous lake. And beside that person and the lake is a billboard worthy of Schitt's Creek. It reads, quote, "Welcome to Bowman, more than just an IKEA toilet brush." End quote. Frank had the honor of watching the entire video and has recorded its magnificence in the following paragraph. Quote, "In the short video, a spokeswoman for the organization, standing next to the much-maligned Lake Bowman, says, 'We want the people to think about the clear water and beautiful surroundings, not a water closet in desperate need of cleansing.' To illustrate her point, she sinks a wooden cup into the lake and drinks from it, daring the viewer to overcome the notion that she is lapping up toilet water." End quote. Now, if you're listening, visit Sweden.com, and I know you're not. I beg you, bring this campaign back. Bring this whole fucking vibe back. We need it. And if you want to hang out in Kalix, which is more than an IKEA shelf, or Laxviken, more than a door front, check out visitsweden.com/discover-the-originals and take me with you. Please take me with you. Let's all go. Just like one big class trip. Please. And thank you for listening, rating, subscribing, telling your friends about the guy who knocked down a wall in his basement and was like, holy shit, I've got almost 300 square miles. Tell him about IKEA. Think of all the shit he could put in his new basement. All the IKEA shit. That's a lot of shit. It's an IKEA itself. God, frightening. And a flat-packed thanks to the folks over at Airwave Media, the podcast network to which WTI belongs. If you love this show, and you do, you love the other podcasts in this family. And please, stay interesting.